Hello. Hello. I'm gonna work on the nose primarily today, and a knock-on effect is gonna be the cranial bones. Then we're gonna tie in the low back and the entire spine to get some nice kind of pumping action on the cerebrospinal fluid. So I'm gonna try and keep it short. I always say that. Gonna go no more than 20 minutes. I've got a clock there, I'm keeping an eye on the clock. So, hopefully you've been watching at least some of the videos so far. You're going to be familiar with one of the spinal movements that we're going to be doing. This is going to tie into that. So, we're using the cogs, mechanical cogs from anatomy and motion. We're using that to create movement of the spine. And we're going to tie in this nose detail into that. So I mentioned in the story that this is going to be particularly good if you've ever broken your nose, if you've ever gotten any sort of concussion, any sort of head trauma, if you have sleep issues, if you struggle to breathe through your nose, if it's only one-sided, if you snore when you sleep, whatever it is, hormonal issues as well, and I'll explain why. This is great for a lot of things, and it's really nice for awareness and just increasing your breathing capacity. So let's get straight to it. The breathing we've been doing is simple nasal breathing. The details are relaxed jaw, lips sealed, and your tongue to the roof of your mouth. So if this is your palate, your tongue is just making a contact there and it's sort of filling up that space. It should be quite comfortable. It's not like a lot of effort, and that should be its natural resting position. But if you've had a lot of dental work, all sorts of things can throw that off. And it's quite interesting actually seeing that the effect that can have on the formation of your jaw, of your face, and all this sort of stuff. That's very cool. If you want to look into that, I can point you in that direction. Anyway, we're going to work with that. We're going to work with the tongue, applying pressure into the palate to mobilize this nasal bone. So first of all, I want you to get a comfortable position, seated, lying down. Lying down is good. We're going to do some lying down towards the end. But whatever is comfortable, and we're just going to do a bit of breathing. You're going to inhale through your nose, natural pause, exhale through your nose, and then what we're going to do is we're going to add in the tongue. So when we inhale, we want the tongue to be making a contact, or the tongue to be pressing in to the palate, pressing up towards the nose as we inhale, and then as we exhale, we want that to relax. We're still going to maintain the contact, but we're not going to be pressing up into the palate. So take just 30 seconds now to feel that difference. As you inhale, you're thinking of pushing up and spreading with your tongue. And as you exhale, you're no longer pressing, but you're maintaining that contact. So do that for the next 30 seconds. So hopefully what you've noticed is that when you press the tongue to the roof of the mouth, you sort of get almost an increased opening in your nose, like you can actually physically breathe more. And that's the idea. There's this mechanical action of your cranial bones. Your cranial bones, they move slightly, they articulate to a certain extent, and they have a rhythm. And just like we see with the cogs, if you lie down and you simply breathe, your bones kind of float in the soft tissue network. They just sort of float and they have a rhythm, and it can be quite predictable, and we can use disruption in that diagnostically, though that's a bit more out there, so we won't get into that. So there is this natural inhale and the nasal bone moves up, and that creates movements in then the other bones, and they have this sort of open close motion, which syncs with the open close of the spine. So we're actually going to go and lie down for this bit, because it's simply easier and it's more pleasant. So if you can't lie down, do the seated, do the standing, whatever it is. And we're going to assist this movement of the nose with our hands. with 2 fingers, we're sort of thinking of a suction cup, as if we're pulling the nose, and we can't actually physically pull the nose, but we can move the skin, we can traction, I hope you can see this, you can traction the skin away from the face and create a slight pull on the nose. So let's take a minute now just to do the tongue pressure. So the tongue should be pushing up and sort of spreading the palate, and then the suction cup action of the fingers when we inhale, and then let go of your hand, let go with your hand on the exhale. Okay, let's go. Okay, so hopefully you could begin to feel that increase in your ability to breathe through your nose. One thing we can try now is that if you find that you struggle to breathe through one nostril, what we're going to try and do is influence that with this, so we can not only encourage the bone up and away from the face, we can also slightly encourage it in one direction, be it left or right. So this is going to be more so an awareness exercise rather than anything. You're not physically changing the position of the nose, you're just kind of creating a tiny bit more space one way, and that's just going to give you more awareness and more control with that awareness. So not only are you pulling the nose away from the face as you inhale, again maintaining that tongue pressure up into the palate, you can encourage the nose while you suction cup it out, either slightly to the left or slightly to the right, and see, does it make it easier, harder, different, easier for one nostril, harder for the other, whatever it is. Just try a few combinations with each inhale and gather some information and gather some experience. So let's go for that. Okay, so hopefully you noticed some differences. You found that you could help things in one way or just make things worse in some way, just to, again, to know that you have that power and to know that this can have that much of an influence. I personally found that whether I went left or right, I was making my right nostril a bit worse and a bit more congested. So that's just information. It doesn't mean anything too specific. It's just awareness. It's just something that I can check back on over time. So hopefully by now we've got a good enough sense of what we're doing, how it feels, and the change it creates by involving the nose, by actively encouraging the nose to move, how it expands our ability to take in oxygen through our nose. We're going to add in the spinal movements now. I did it a bit in the last exercise, that you may have noticed, but let's get really into it now. So a quick recap: if you haven't seen this, go back to one of the older videos where we look at this. But essentially, as we inhale, we're going to expand the belly, and that's going to create a movement of the pelvis forward, tipping forward, a spilling forward down towards our toes. And as we exhale, we're going to flatten our low back to the ground, and it's like the pelvis, thinking of it like a cup, it's going to spill backwards. And then with the ribs, as we inhale, they're sort of going to flare here, like we're opening our chest, and then as we exhale, they're sinking down and flattening towards the ground. So let's do a quick round of that. Inhaling. Nice natural pause, holding that pressure. Okay, so once we're used to that, we're going to add in the nose movement in sync with that. So again, the inhale is we're pulling the nose away from the face, that's suction cup action, pressure with the tongue. Okay, so the final detail we're going to add in, this can be quite hard for people to coordinate, so don't worry if you can't do it. If you've been watching the videos, if you've followed some of this stuff, if you're familiar with the cogs, you might be able to do this quite easily, but we're going to incorporate the head. So the head should move somewhat automatically with that. Sometimes people, if they don't have that awareness, the head just sort of stays glued here and all of this movement is happening below, but it's really not filtering up to the head. So we're going to try and do that a bit more consciously. And because, again, of that cogs relationship, the head actually mirrors the pelvis. So the ribs are stuck in between, and as the pelvis moves one way, ribs move the other, which causes the head then to move in the same way as the pelvis. So as we inhale, we're tucking the chin, and as we exhale, we're creating an arch in the low, in the small under our neck, basically. I shouldn't have worn a hoodie. Look at it. Sorry, wardrobe malfunction. So this space here, as I inhale, I'm sort of flattening this space here and keeping in contact with the back of my head. And as I'm exhaling, I'm accentuating that arch here. So don't worry about holding the nose for now. Let's just do the breathing and then we'll add in the nose. So inhaling. Now you don't have to accentuate this as much as I am. It can just be a little nod forward and a little tilt back. I'm really accentuating this because I'm familiar with it. I know how to do it comfortably. But yeah, it can just be a slight little tilt forward, and then like you're looking back over your head on the exhale. So hopefully you're able to coordinate that. Hopefully that makes enough sense. If not, don't worry, keep practicing, revisit this, and if that was easy, let's move on to the nose. So it's going to be the same thing, inhaling, suction cup away from the face, tongue pressure spreading the palate. Okay, so that's essentially it. By all means, keep practicing that. I mentioned at the start that this is going to be good for sleep, so it's going to be particularly good for sleep if you try it when you go to sleep. It can be really good for hormonal health, particularly related to high stress. So your pituitary gland is here, just sort of behind these bones, and it sits sort of surrounded by a lot of these bones. And even though the movement is very slight, that actual movement aids with the actual, almost like a pumping mechanism on that gland, and helps it work properly. So a lot of times when people have like a nose fracture or some sort of head trauma, it like traumatic brain injuries, inflammation of the brain because of the actual trauma, and that obviously persists in the case of traumatic brain injury, and it persists because not only is there that initial trauma, but it throws off all the hormone production, and you start getting stress hormones being produced in a disproportionate rate. So something like this is a really simple corrective. It's a very conservative corrective. You might need something more elaborate, but I find something like this, particularly over time, combined with everything else, can be really, really helpful. And that simple movement, you're mobilizing the low back, the entire spine, all the cranial bones, your nose, getting some exercise out of your tongue, which is good. And yeah, so it's an exercise I love. Hopefully you found it beneficial. Again, we're just short of 20 minutes. Again, if you have any questions, let me know. Special requests for very specific things, very general topics. Again, I'm focusing very much on back pain and things that are directly connected to back pain, but any kind of pain, whatever it is, let me know, and we'll do a video. So we'll be back tomorrow at 12. I'm going to work on hips tomorrow, hips and hip extension as it relates to low back pain. But if you've got hips, you should come. If you've got a low back, you should definitely come. Yeah, cool. I'll see you tomorrow. This will be up for 24 hours, and I'll see you again tomorrow.